Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Ida Pearlie here at the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, and we have a special guest with us, Ryan Disney from Red Arrow Farms. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule. I know we're coming into Croptober as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's all right. Thank you. It's always I'm always glad to talk with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, I just want to give a shout out because you are on the cover of one of our magazines.
Yeah,
So when Rob and I first came out to see you, gosh, that was what, 2019, I
spring of
think?
2019. Yeah, we
20,
were in
yeah,
that trailer.
yeah.
We hadn't even gotten our outdoor field approved yet, or the big one anyway.
Right, right. So that led to you coming into the system and navigating through certain regulatory issues. Do you want to
hmm
explain, our your role in that and our role in that and how all of that facilitated?
Yeah, I mean that first issue was just getting that outdoor field approved. So Red Arrow Farm, we're primarily an outdoor grower, and I think at the time we may have been the first to actually get licensed or to get approved. So we had some issues with. It seems like all the regulations were written and thought of for indoor cultivation. So there were some tweaks that we had to make. Some of the regulations around camera coverage just don't really make sense. I mean, they make a lot of sense indoors when you're growing, plants that are 2 feet tall. But when you're growing plants that are 9 or 10 feet tall and you can literally get inside of them, the requirement at the time was a person's hands had to be visible at all times. So that's just
Mm,
not possible. We couldn't physically take care of the plants outdoors and meet these ultra stringent regulations. But so we sort of brought those issues to you guys. We collectively went to MRA, and they've been really great to work with to sort of update regulations based upon practical considerations.
mhm. And that really helped a lot of, outdoor farmers,
Yeah,
to navigate, to be able to give a timeline in order to, make changes, to the growth cycles.
yeah,
How
certainly.
important was that?
Well, growth cycles and sort of allocating what you're going to do with your product, with the thing you're growing. Our Red Arrow's kind of plan from the beginning was to have large outdoor cultivation and co-located processing. So we would be turning flower into processed goods. Um, that, I mean, of course, we would want to be able to sell flower if that was available. It turned out in
Mhm.
that first year that it wasn't, because the heavy metal requirements were so tight that we just couldn't. It's not like we had a lot of heavy metals in our flour. We just couldn't quite meet or we couldn't reliably meet the limits. And because testing is so expensive, we just decided to kind of go back to the original plan and just go straight for to process everything.
Mhm.
That's actually how I think we really got involved with you guys. We did a bunch of research looking at, okay, so why are we failing these tests? We went and looked at both sort of the plant side, which is sort of my background, but also like, why are the regulations what they are? Like, are these
Mhm.
regulations appropriate? And we found that I can't prove it, but it looks like somebody in either Colorado or California just copied and pasted a table from. So USP is an NGO that does this sort of fundamental testing for heavy metals and food and drugs and all sorts of things. And we found this one table that says, these limits are based upon 10 grams a day of a fictional inhaled drug product. And it looks like someone just copied and pasted that whole thing in without going back to look and see if that 10 gram a day figure was really appropriate. So we dug into the scientific literature, and it seems like it's not really justified. It should be something more like 2 grams a day.
Right.
And so we brought that information to you and Robin, and then we kind of all got in the room with Director Brisboe and MRA, and we sort of presented the evidence. And From there, we had a series of other conversations. I think that's then Director Brisboe convened the Scientific Advisory Work Group, which I'm on, and we sort of did this in a more formal way and said, hey, this is a very justifiable figure. And based upon that evidence, MRI actually doubled all of the analytical testing limits for all of metals. So that was another sort of example of where, industry had an issue. We brought it to the industry group, and together with regulators, we came up with a solution that sort of met everybody's needs.
That's really impressive. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've got more room on that too, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. So tell us a little bit about your background. So you come from the scientific, you're a scientist?
Yeah, I have my bachelor's in plant biology from Michigan State, master's from Northwestern. I was in sort of plant biology, ecology as an undergrad. And then after school, I went and worked in commercial real estate for no good reason. But on the side, I was consulting in kind of any capacity or industry that had sort of plant ecology aspect and industrial aspects. So worked on the bioremediation of surface waters, paper industry, packaging, alcohol, kind of anything that had sort of both of those components. And I sort of backed into the cannabis industry because I think I want to say 2014, Illinois was rolling out their medical program, and a friend of a friend knew some people that were applying for one of those. So I ended up writing a big chunk of their application, and that application was awarded one of the 2 licenses in the city of Chicago.
Oh, wow.
So that was sort of my entry into cannabis. Sort of kept in touch with the people who ran that license. And then in 2018 or so, my wife and family and I were living in London, and I got an email kind of out of the blue saying, hey, I know you're from Michigan. I'm working with this new group. Are you interested? And then here I am. So I've been with Red Arrow since sort of the very start of 2019.
Okay, that's impressive. So now I know they reached out and you moved back, but you're not in Michigan, you're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. We live in Chicago. So the Red Arrow is on the west side of the state, sort of where my family's from. My parents live there. So I sort of commute as needed. 2019, that was quite a lot. I was there 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes more. Now it's, a couple of days a week, sort of depending on what's going on.
Nice. Okay. And you're in Bangor, correct? Red Arrow Farms is in Bangor? Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's, I see a lot of 94. I know it well.
I'm sure. So can you tell us a little bit about like your sustainability as far as a farm and how you're wanting to move forward in recycling and what does that look like?
The biggest sustainable thing that we did was just decide to make an outdoor farm. Everyone's sort of aware of the infrastructure required to grow indoors, and it's just a whole lot less outdoors. We get, the sun is a very great light, and it does a good job of growing cannabis. The sort of issue that we're having most is that we're trying to grow plants that have gone through this big, call it prohibition bottleneck, where law enforcement sort of forced growers to grow, in the 60s and 70s, they were growing these big plants outdoors. And then the authorities started using helicopters to police that. And so it sort of forced people to, that's when they started introducing all these sort of dwarf genetics, or the sort of indica genetics, where it's sort of a lower, not big upright tree, it's sort of a lower plant, smaller plant, so instead of 12-foot tall, monster, you'd get something that was like 4 or 5 feet tall, or maybe you were trying to harvest a couple of weeks before you knew the helicopters were showing up. And then, 70s and 80s, it got even worse that people were pushed indoors. So then the size of the plant really mattered. So then they were
Okay.
really creating these sort of smaller plants. And along that process, a lot of the traits that are important in agronomic context, doing what we're trying to do, grow outside and minimal inputs and all that, just were sort of ignored because they weren't important for those growers that were growing in highly controlled environments and sort of off the radar. If they got a disease infestation or whatever, they could just wipe the slate clean or hit it with the nastiest fungicides that they could find, and that's not something that we can do. So it took a while to find sort of a suite of plants that were more or less happy to grow where we're growing them, and had the yields that we were looking for and the potency, and didn't require as much trellising and all that stuff. And I think there's a lot of improvement there, and that's great for sustainability, because the biggest thing that we can do to sort of average down our impact is to grow more with less. And that's every business is trying to do that.
Right.
So I think there's more of an opportunity to do that outdoors than there is indoors. I think indoors is I mean, of course, there are always going to be efficiency improvements, but there's just not enough opportunity there.
Okay, that's interesting. What's the biggest difference between outdoor and indoor? I know you talked about it a little bit, but what's the biggest thing?
Biggest thing,
or the difference, I guess.
Well,
I mean, it's controlled environment.
Controlled environment. I mean, that's
right.
So, you're going to be able to, by and large, grow prettier flower indoors.
Okay.
You're also able to grow plants indoors that you'd never be able to grow outdoors. So these plants that are really supercharged, super high THC, great, whatever, you can grow those indoors. And so it sort of looks more efficient to grow indoors, but it's just that the breeding for indoors is so much farther along. People have been breeding these plants for 50 years, sort of on this trajectory to grow indoors. And, I'm not saying that it hasn't happened outdoors, it's just not on the same scale. Or, there are plants that are, adapted to the West Coast that aren't necessarily appropriate for, the environment that we're trying to grow in.
Right.
So, we're on the west side of the state. We're kind of in the lake effect snow area. So we get a lot of weather.
Okay.
Last year, our farm actually got hit by a tornado.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It went directly over our property. It surprisingly didn't kill all that many plants, but it unplanted about 2,500 plants. So it just sort of sucked them up out of the ground and put them right back down.
Right, right.
But the worst part about that was it scattered all of our plant tags everywhere. So we spent weeks finding tags and putting them back on plants or re-tagging them. And that's another one of those things where tagging every plant makes a lot of sense indoors, but outdoors there are, we didn't anticipate, having to, replant, a quarter of our crop and re-tag half of it.
Right.
And then, that tornado killed a couple of hoop houses. It destroyed a barn, and it's just something that not a lot of indoor growers, at least I haven't heard that they've had to deal with. Yeah.
Right. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. So you have an 80-acre farm, is that correct?
It's about 80 acres. There's probably half of that is arable. I think we're up to about, call it 25 acres that's enclosed in our, currently in our perimeter.
Nice.
But we've got that outdoors. We've got greenhouses coming online now, and we'll have some indoor space, probably Q1 next year.
Okay, okay. And what about your products? I know you've got some cartridges that in flower, and what's your what you do you
A
have
little bit of
retails
flour.
too?
We've got a little bit of flour. Mostly, we've got three, four different varieties of carts that
Okay.
are selling pretty well. But we've got more things in the pipeline. So
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's always exciting.
For
Very
sure.
cool. Yeah. So, do you have a personal story with cannabis other than, just wanting to get into it because of the plants? Like, I guess what drew you to plants? You have to have a personal story, with cannabis because it is a plant. So,
Yeah, I mean, I really am more interested in cannabis as a plant. I'm a user on a small level. I, was in college and high school a little bit, but it was really the plant science aspect is really kind of grabbed a hold of me. There's just such an opportunity. This sort of opportunity will never happen again, and certainly in my lifetime, where a plant went from, you know, prohibition. It was, we weren't allowed to study it in any meaningful way, and now, I mean, I was an essential worker. In the
right.
course of 2 years, we went from sort of not legal. When I first started with Red Arrow, I sort of reached out to a bunch of old colleagues, and people were saying, "Yeah, let's talk, but use my personal email address." They like, there was like this wall where they just didn't want to deal with it. They all have grants and things, and I get it.
Mhm.
But now we've got people, knocking on our door saying, "Hey, can we do something together?" So it's been really interesting to sort of reconnect with sort of academia, and we're working with industrial partners on a bunch of different research and development projects. So that's
Mhm.
sort of what the research has really got me going. It's um, just, there's always something to learn, and problem solving and finding solutions that other industries have already figured out, and sort of applying them in this new
Right.
context. And it's really everything, especially for outdoor. I mean, they're just, we're scouring the world for different kinds of tractors that allow us to be, a little bit more efficient. We found this Danish firm that makes a really interesting outboard. It's got these outrigger. Uh, I guess, yeah, they're outriggers. You sit in the cab of the thing, and my shoulders are touching the sides, but
Mhm.
because these outriggers move, you can change the width spacing. We can basically get rid of our drive aisles, which makes, that land that much more efficient. So it makes a
Wow.
really big difference.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's exciting.
Hmm.
So, how does it feel to essentially be making medicine for patients? I mean, I know rec. This is what's interesting. Everyone says, well, people are smoking. Rec's legal now. Okay, that's
Yeah,
great, but there's still another component. There's still medicine being made, and you're supplying medicine. So, how does that feel?
it's really interesting. So, so how do I get at this? A lot of my friends, so I've got five different friends or family members who know someone that's had cancer and
Mhm.
started using cannabis specifically because of that.
Right.
And so it's everybody's like older parents or their grandparents, and then all of a sudden, the stigma is in these little pods is like wiped away. They're just like, "Oh, how come we didn't know about this 10 years ago?"
Right.
And sort of getting to see how it affects people's lives in this really positive way, when those same people would have thought the exact opposite 10 years ago, is really sort of fascinating. So, I mean, who knows what is sort of coming down the line. And I mean, the research is just so new, and there are new things coming out all the time about the positive benefits for people and the possible applications in all these different areas. It's really interesting to be part of that, and
Mhm.
gratifying to know that something that you're doing, um, in a professional setting, we're all getting paid, and like, a lot of people wouldn't be doing this if that weren't the case, but the work that we're doing really is making positive impacts in other people's lives. So it's like this really great silver lining for me, because I'm not doing it because of that, but it's great.
Right, right. In a way, you're helping establish a quality of life for people who really don't have one, or they're looking to find a better quality of life. And it
Yeah,
sounds like you have that experience
yeah.
with friends, and again, it's breaking
Well,
down those stigmas. It's helping them understand.
yeah, Red Arrow wouldn't exist if it wasn't for a situation like that. Our founder, Barry Roloff's daughter, Brittany, who works for the company and is a big part of the reason we exist. I think she was at the time the youngest medical patient in the state when in Michigan when it rolled out, or one of the youngest, and
Mm-hmm.
it's made a huge impact on her life positively. And so because of her unfortunate sort of medical conditions, this whole thing is sort of grown around that negative and is helping to provide relief for her and for anybody else in Michigan who needs it.
Yeah, and for me, that I think that's like the most heartwarming, part of this whole industry is it's again we're giving a quality of life back to people who didn't have one. We're suffering from pain, migraines, debilitating pain,
Yeah.
and it's refreshing, when there's people who don't really have a personal story, but they understand the impact and how important it is, and really what's driving this industry. So I appreciate your work. Thank you.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's important, and we all have to stick together and keep driving this industry forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep that front of mind. That's and I mean everything kind of is related, but that's one of the reasons I'm really interested in sort of the regulatory side, because sort of the more careful we are with our regulations, sort of the bigger the opportunity is to increase the regulated market and sort of get more people into it, make sure that the products that they're using are safe and effective and consistent. I think all these things are really closely related, and sort of making sure that every piece of it is sort of thoughtful is important.
Definitely, and we definitely need more, scientists in this industry who are researching it and finding the different benefits and how it's plugging in, those gaps where we're missing in certain pharmaceuticals and just different, lifestyles, that we live. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great seeing sort of we're starting to get inquiries from college students, saying like, how can I get involved? And that's another regulatory issue, or we can't, if they're not 21, you can't come on site.
Right.
And so
Right.
like, how do we sort of, and we've, I've had, I don't want to talk at a school, but had some talks with MRA about how we can sort of work within the rules that are set in the regulations and still sort of grow that next generation of professionals who will tackle a lot of these problems.
Right. And then that's important because there is going to be a younger generation coming up into this industry that needs to be trained and fully vetted and knows what they're doing. Yeah. So it's boots on the ground. And so we appreciate that. Definitely. Do you want to give a shout out, or is there anything else that you'd like to say before we close?
Oh geez. Just buy outdoor flower. I don't know. Indoor flower looks great, but outdoor, man, come on.
Right.
But
there's a true passion and cultivating and blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it goes into both of them. I understand that, but I think outside you're definitely more open to the elements and Mother Nature and.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, I sort of tongue in cheek, but yeah, no, I'm just happy to be working in the industry with a bunch of people, you guys included, that are interested and passionate about sort of what we're doing. So.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking your time out today and joining us and sharing a little bit about Red Arrow. And your products, and we encourage everyone to go out into dispensaries and buy them and support Red Arrow Farms and
Yeah.
everything that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And if anyone out there is interested in, working on an outdoor farm, hit us up. If you're in industry or in academia and you want a place to do research, come find me.
Nice. That's good to know. Well, we'll have to help you promote that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We definitely need more scientists and people passionate, I mean, we have a pretty passionate industry anyways, but I think the scientific part, the passion, has to come too. So awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to our summer conference next year.
Yes, absolutely.
I got to get you out on the boat party. You haven't come.
I haven't. Well, I had a family thing this year, so sign me up. I'll be there.
Yeah, we understand that. Next year, I'm holding you to it.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan. Well, you take
All
care
right.
and say hi to everyone at Red Arrow Farms for us, and we'll have to get back out there soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ida.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Ida Perley here at the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. Next week, we are going to be in Vegas at the MJ BizCon out there. Hopefully, we might be able to do a little, online here and there. We're not sure. But join us the following week for our next podcast, and we'll see you all then. Take care. Bye-bye.